When Jesus knew the time had come, he travelled to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover with his disciples. He sent the disciples ahead to borrow a young donkey. The disciples put their coats on the back of the colt, and Jesus rode into town. Word spread quickly that Jesus had come, and people ran from everywhere to see him. They cut leafy branches and waved the branches like flags. But not everyone celebrated Jesus' arrival. In fact, it wasn't long before one of his disciples, Judas, agreed to hand Jesus over to the chief priests for a mere 30 pieces of silver. Jesus knew what was about to happen and gave permission to Judas to do what he was about to do. On the same night, while Jesus shared a special meal with his disciples. After the meal, Jesus took bread, broke it, and said this was like his body, which was about to be broken as a sacrifice for the whole world. He then did the same with some wine, explaining it was like his blood, which was going to be poured out for the sins of many. After they had eaten, Jesus and his disciples went to a garden to pray. Jesus knew what was about to happen, and his heart felt heavy. He asked the disciples to keep watch while he went to pray to God alone. But they were tired and continued to fall asleep. It was during this time that some soldiers arrived and arrested Jesus. Jesus was taken to the high priest's house for questioning. Peter followed and waited in the courtyard. Throughout the evening, many recognized Peter and asked him if he was one of Jesus' disciples. Each time Peter denied the accusations. After this happened 3 times, a rooster began to crow, just as Jesus described would happen. While Jesus was standing trial, some of the soldiers twisted thorns together to make a crown. They had heard Jesus' claims that he was the king of the Jews, so they placed the crown of thorns on his head, a purple robe around him, and began to mock him. Before long, Jesus was sentenced to be crucified. Soldiers led Jesus outside Jerusalem, and when they reached the place called the Skull, they nailed him to a wooden cross. After Jesus was nailed to the cross, the soldier took his clothes and divided them amongst themselves. The inner robe that Jesus wore was made of one piece of cloth and was significantly more valuable. The soldiers sat and gambled to see who would get to keep this prized piece of clothing. At midday, the sky went dark and Jesus cried out, "It is finished," and took his last breath. The soldiers had been ordered to break up the legs of those on the cross to speed up their death. Because Jesus had already died, they decided to pierce the side of his chest, and water and blood flowed out. According to Jewish law, dead bodies would not be left exposed overnight. Some of Jesus' followers, including a man named Joseph, requested Jesus' body be released so they could place his body in a tomb. They wrapped his body in clean linen cloths and took it to the tomb. After Jesus was placed in the tomb, the entrance was covered with a large, heavy rock. Fearful that someone might steal the body, the authorities put a royal seal on the stone and placed soldiers on duty to guard the tomb. What happened to Jesus was terrible and cruel, but the story doesn't stop there. God had a big rescue plan in play, and in his time he was going to reveal it to us all. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but will have eternal life.